The conference room stretched over 300 meters across with walls made of pure crystal that showed the stars beyond. Inside Viridian Prime Station, representatives from 3 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations sat around a massive table. They had been talking for 3 days now, and Ambassador Taeyang Kim was tired of listening. The Krill Queen Mother clicked her mandibles together, making a sound like breaking glass. Her massive form took up an entire section of the table, her black exoskeleton reflecting the station's lights. Behind her stood dozens of soldier drones, each one capable of tearing a human apart with bare claws. She had been speaking for almost an hour, explaining why humanity needed to surrender. Taeyang sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table. He was 58 years old with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen many difficult negotiations. Next to him sat Admiral Mirai Choi, wearing her fleet uniform with its simple insignia. She looked relaxed, but Taeyang knew she was calculating every possible outcome. Across from them, Dr. Hajun Park took notes on a datapad, his face showing nothing. Counselor Bora Yoon sat at the end, her expression hard as stone. The Luminar representative spoke next, though calling it speech was not quite right. The being was made of pure energy contained in a floating crystal shell, and it communicated through pulses of light that the station's computers translated into words. Its voice came out cold and artificial. Humanity has expanded into 73 systems in the past 50 years, the Luminar said. This expansion threatens the stability of established borders. Your species is too aggressive, too unpredictable. The Galactic Council has decided that humans cannot be trusted with unlimited growth. The Drax war chief hissed his agreement. He was twice the size of a human, covered in scales that looked like armor with claws that could crush steel. His people had conquered 40 species before humanity ever left Earth. Your kind fights without honor, he said, his voice a deep rumble. You use weapons that civilized species abandoned centuries ago. You are dangerous children playing with fire. Taeyang had heard variations of this speech for 3 days. The message was always the same. Humanity was too young, too violent, too unpredictable. The 3 powers had come together, something that rarely happened because they all agreed on one thing. Humans needed to be controlled. The terms were simple. Earth would give up 60% of its colonies. The remaining colonies would accept Galactic Council observers who would monitor all human activities. Humanity's fleet would be reduced to 1/10 of its current size. All new technology would require Council approval before deployment. Earth would pay reparations for the disruption caused by human expansion. In exchange, the 3 powers would not destroy humanity completely. They presented this as generous. The Queen Mother leaned forward. You have no choice in this matter. Our combined fleets number over 5,000 warships. Yours number fewer than 1,000. Our civilizations have existed for thousands of years. Yours has been in space for barely 150. Accept these terms, or we will take what we want by force. Taeyang finally spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. May I ask a question? The Luminar pulsed with what might have been amusement. Speak. In your 3 civilizations' long histories, how many wars have you fought against each other? The Drax war chief snorted. What does that matter? Humor me, please. The 3 representatives looked at each other. Finally, the Luminar answered. The last major conflict between our peoples ended 400 years ago. Since then, we have maintained peace through the Galactic Council system. It is a system that works. A system your species threatens. Taeyang nodded slowly. 400 years of peace. That is impressive. Do you know how long it has been since Earth's last major war? Your people unified their planet approximately 100 years ago, the Queen Mother said. We have studied your history. Before that, you spent thousands of years in constant warfare, killing each other with increasingly terrible weapons. Your species nearly destroyed itself multiple times. That's true, Taeyang agreed. We did nearly destroy ourselves. Several times, in fact. But we learned from those experiences. Every war taught us something new about warfare, about strategy, about what civilized beings should and should not do. We wrote those lessons down. We teach them to every generation. Admiral Mirai spoke for the first time, her voice carrying an edge that made the Drax war chief's eyes narrow. You have had 400 years of peace. Do you know what that means? It means 400 years without needing to innovate in warfare. 400 years of military thinking becoming stagnant. 400 years of forgetting what real war actually looks like. Are you threatening us? The Luminar demanded, its light pulsing red. No, Taeyang said calmly. The Admiral is simply stating facts. You asked us here to accept surrender terms. You assumed we would have no choice. But you made a mistake. You assumed that because we are young, we are weak. You assumed that because we want peace, we cannot wage war. He stood up slowly, gathering his papers. The three alien representatives seemed confused. This was not how these meetings went. The weaker species always tried to negotiate, to beg for better terms, to buy time. They did not simply stand up and prepare to leave. We came here in good faith, Taeyang continued. We came because we hoped to avoid conflict. We came to offer you a chance to step back from this path, but you have made your intentions clear. You see humanity as a problem to be solved, a threat to be contained. You believe your superior numbers and ancient civilizations give you the right to dictate terms to us. Counselor Bora stood as well, her voice sharp. You have the right to try, but understand something. Humanity did not come to these talks to surrender. We came to give you one final opportunity to avoid a war. We came to show respect to ancient civilizations, even though you have shown us none. We came because we still hoped for peace. Dr. Hajun closed his datapad with a soft click. That hope is gone now. The Queen Mother's mandibles clacked rapidly, a sign of agitation. You cannot be serious. You cannot win this war. Simple mathematics proves it. You are outnumbered, outgunned, outexperienced. Admiral Mireille smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Mathematics, yes. Let me offer you some different mathematics. In our species' history, we have fought thousands of wars. We have refined the art of killing to a science. We have weapons you have never seen, tactics you have never imagined, and a willingness to do whatever it takes to survive. Your civilization stopped needing to innovate in warfare 400 years ago. Ours never stopped. Taeyang walked toward the door, the rest of the human delegation following. At the doorway, he turned back. The three alien representatives sat in stunned silence, unable to believe what was happening. No species had ever walked away from surrender terms, not when faced with such overwhelming odds. You should have accepted our friendship when we offered it, Taeyang said quietly. You will regret making us your enemy. The doors closed behind the humans, leaving the three powers alone in the conference room. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Drax war chief began to laugh, a deep booming sound that echoed off the crystal walls. They are insane, he said, completely insane. They will learn what happens when children challenge their elders. But the Queen Mother was not laughing. Something in the human ambassador's eyes had disturbed her, something cold and certain. She had seen that look before, long ago, in the eyes of a predator that had nothing left to lose. On the human ship departing from Viridian Prime, Admiral Mireille received an encrypted message on her personal console. She read it once, then twice, then allowed herself a small smile. She opened a secure channel to every human vessel in the fleet. All ships, she said calmly. Execute Protocol Prometheus. I repeat, execute Protocol Prometheus. The galaxy is about to learn why you should never threaten humanity's children. Across known space, in dozens of systems, human ships that had been positioned as merchants, explorers, and peaceful traders suddenly changed their status. Hidden weapons came online, encrypted communications activated, supply caches opened, and in the quiet of space, humanity prepared to teach an ancient lesson to civilizations that had forgotten it. Sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one that tried very hard not to be. The Krill Armada moved through space like a dark cloud. 500 warships arranged in perfect formation. Fleet Admiral Chikara stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. Around him, his officers clicked and chittered in the Krill language, coordinating the attack on the human colony of New Sejong. The colony orbited a yellow star in what humans called the Helix Nebula, 40 light-years from Earth. Intelligence reported 3 million human civilians and a small defensive garrison. The Krill fleet alone outnumbered the human defenders 10-1. Add in the Luminar and Drax forces hitting other colonies simultaneously, and this would be over in days. All ships report ready, his communications officer announced. We will enter the system in 60 seconds. Chikara felt certain of victory. The Krill had not lost a major battle in 3 centuries. Humans were primitives who barely understood proper fleet tactics. This would be a lesson the galaxy would remember for generations. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, weapons charging, ready to overwhelm the colony's defenses. The tactical display updated, showing the system's layout. Chikara leaned forward, studying the readings, then froze. "Where are they?" he demanded. The system was empty. Or rather, it was full of ships, but the readings made no sense. Hundreds of vessels showed on sensors, but they were scattered randomly, moving in chaotic patterns. Their energy signatures were all wrong. Some read as battleships, others as civilian transports, others as something the computers could not identify. "Sir, we are detecting over 300 contacts, but the patterns are inconsistent," the tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously. "The colony appears abandoned. No life signs on the planet." "It is a trap," Chikara said, but his voice held uncertainty. "What kind of trap?" The human ships were outnumbered and making no effort to form defensive lines. They were just everywhere, moving seemingly at random. Then the first mine exploded. It had been sitting dormant in space for months, its signature masked to look like ordinary debris. When the Krill flagship passed within range, it activated and detonated with the force of a small star. Shields absorbed most of the blast, but 3 nearby cruisers were damaged. Then another mine exploded. Then another. Then dozens all at once. The perfect Krill formation broke apart as ships scattered, trying to avoid the minefield they had flown into. But the mines were not in any pattern. They were everywhere, activated by proximity sensors that had been waiting patiently. "Damage reports from 30 ships," an officer shouted. "Nothing critical yet, but shields are depleting." Chikara tried to restore order. "All ships maintain formation. Focus point defense on the mines. Locate the human fleet." But the human fleet was already moving. Captain Jiwan Lee commanded the frigate Dancing Thunder, one of 40 human ships that had been hiding in the nebula's thick clouds. Her vessel was smaller than any Krill warship, faster and equipped with an experimental drive system that let her jump to precise coordinates. She watched the Krill fleet scatter and smiled. "All ships execute pattern alpha. Hit and run. Do not let them lock weapons." Her ship jumped, appearing 2,000 kilometers behind a Krill destroyer. Her weapons fired for 3 seconds, targeting the destroyer's engines. Then she jumped away before return fire could reach her. The destroyer's engines exploded, leaving it drifting. Around the system, 40 human ships did the same thing. Jump in, fire, jump out. The Krill could not target them. Their weapon systems were designed for traditional fleet battles with predictable formations, not for enemies that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "This is not warfare," Chikara growled. "This is cowardice." But his ships were dying. Slowly, one by one, the humans were picking them apart, and now his long-range communications were being jammed. He could not call for reinforcements or coordinate with the other fleets. He was alone in a system that had become a death trap. 3 star systems away, the Luminar Collective was learning the same lesson. Their fleet of 800 ships had jumped into the human colony of Hanul, expecting to find frightened colonists and weak defenses. Instead, they found an empty colony and a swarm of small human vessels. Luminar Node 7 processed the tactical data with growing confusion. Node 7 was a distributed intelligence. Its consciousness spread across multiple ships designed for perfect strategic coordination. But the human tactics made no sense. They violated every principle of efficient warfare. The humans were using civilian mining ships equipped with military weapons. They were using automated drones that kamikaze into Luminar vessels. They were broadcasting false sensor readings, making one ship look like 10 or making 10 ships invisible. The node's perfect calculations kept failing because the data was wrong. Worse, the human weapons were specifically designed to counter Luminar technology. Energy dampeners that disrupted the node's communication between ships. Quantum scramblers that made the Luminar sensors useless. Weapons that targeted the crystal shells containing Luminar consciousness, threatening them with permanent death. Humans do not fight with honor. One part of Node 7 observed to another part of itself. They fight to win. The node made a decision that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. It ordered a retreat. But when the fleet tried to jump away, they discovered the humans had deployed faster-than-light inhibitors around the system's jump points. They were trapped, forced to fight their way out against an enemy that refused to fight fair. The Drax Empire's fleet learned the hardest lesson of all. 2,000 ships under War Chief Eskrell's command attacked the human colony of Seongju, expecting the easiest battle of the war. The Drax were warriors bred for combat, with ships designed to close range and overwhelm enemies with superior firepower. They never got close enough to use that firepower. The humans had seeded the entire system with satellites weeks ago, disguised as scientific equipment. When the Drax fleet arrived, those satellites activated. They were not weapons themselves. They were targeting systems, painting every Drax ship with tracking beams. Then the missiles came. Thousands of them, launched from platforms hidden in asteroid belts, on moons, and orbital stations. The missiles were not sophisticated. They were simple, cheap, and numerous. Each one carried a nuclear warhead that the Drax considered primitive technology, but there were so many of them, and they all knew exactly where their targets were. The Drax point defense system shot down hundreds of missiles, then thousands, but more kept coming. The humans had done the mathematics. They knew exactly how many missiles it would take to overwhelm Drax defenses. They had built twice that number. Escarral watched his flagship's shields fail under the constant bombardment. Around him, dozens of ships reported critical damage. His warriors were the finest in the galaxy, but they could not fight what they could not reach. The human ships stayed far away, launching missiles from beyond weapons range, jumping away whenever Drax vessels tried to close distance. "This is not battle," Scarral roared. "This is slaughter." His communications officer looked up with fear in his eyes. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission. It is broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through." A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect Drax language. The voice belonged to Commander Deho Shin, though the Drax did not know his name yet. "Attention, Drax fleet. You are surrounded. Your supply lines are cut. Your communication networks are jammed. Your home systems are now defended only by garrison forces. You came to our space believing your superior numbers and warrior culture would bring easy victory. You forgot something important. Humans have fought each other for thousands of years. We know every dirty trick, every brutal tactic, every way to make war more terrible. We learned these lessons in blood on our homeworld." Escarral tried to trace the signal, but it was bouncing through too many relays. The human could be anywhere in the system. The voice continued, colder now. "You call yourselves warriors. You think honor matters in war, but honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose. Humanity cannot afford to lose. So we fight without honor, without mercy, without hesitation. We fight to win no matter the cost. That is the difference between warrior culture and survivor culture. Warriors seek glorious battle. Survivors seek victory by any means necessary." The transmission ended, leaving the Drax fleet in chaos. Ships tried to retreat but found their escape routes blocked by minefields. They tried to fight, but the humans would not stand still long enough to be killed. They tried to regroup, but their communications kept failing. Back on Viridian Prime, the three alien leaders finally understood what had happened. While they had been negotiating, lecturing humanity on proper behavior, dictating terms of surrender, the humans had been preparing. Every diplomat had been a spy. Every trade ship had been positioning weapons. Every science mission had been mapping their defenses. The war was 2 days old, and the three mighty civilizations were already losing. Their fleets were scattered across dozens of systems, cut off from supply and support, being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight fair. The Queen Mother's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. They planned this, all of it. The talks were never about negotiation. They were about positioning us, dividing our forces, making us confident. The Luminar pulsed with what might have been. The corridors of the Drax flagship Burning Honor were filled with smoke and the smell of burning metal. War Chief Skrull ran through the passageways with his personal guard, trying to reach the bridge. Somewhere behind him, human boarding teams were systematically taking control of his ship. It should have been impossible. The Drax were warriors, each one capable of killing 3 humans in close combat. Their ships were fortresses, designed to repel boarding actions. But the humans had not tried to board in any way the Drax expected. They had not used boarding pods or docking clamps. Instead, they had rammed small ships loaded with Marines directly into the flagship's hangar bay, the ships exploding on impact to create breaches in the internal walls. The Marines had poured through before emergency bulkheads could seal, wearing armor that could withstand vacuum and carrying weapons the Drax had not seen before. Escarral reached an intersection and stopped, his guards forming a defensive circle. Down one corridor he could hear the sounds of fighting, human voices shouting in their quick, harsh language. Weapons fire, screams of dying Drax. Major Youngsu Kang led his Marine squad through the ship with efficient brutality. He was shorter than the Drax warriors, lighter, physically weaker. None of that mattered. His team had trained for this specific scenario for months, studying Drax ship layouts, practicing boarding actions and mock-ups, learning where every system and weakness could be found. Second squad, seal that corridor, he ordered calmly. Third squad, override life support in sections 12 through 15. Fourth squad, with me. We are taking the bridge. His Marines moved like they had done this 1,000 times before, because they had, just not in actual combat. They used flash grenades to blind defenders, then followed up with precise gunfire. They used the ship's own systems against it, accessing control panels to lock doors, vent atmosphere, or cut power to specific sections. They fought dirty, using every advantage, caring nothing for honor or fair combat. When they encountered groups of Drax warriors, they did not engage directly. Instead, they fell back, sealed bulkheads, and filled the corridors with chemical weapons. The Drax had stopped using such weapons centuries ago, considering them uncivilized. The humans had no such concerns. Young-Su watched through his helmet's display as Drax warriors collapsed, choking on gases that attacked their respiratory systems. He felt nothing. These warriors had come to human space to kill civilians, to destroy colonies, to teach humanity a lesson. Now they were learning a different lesson entirely. "Sir, we have control of engineering," one of his squad leaders reported. "The ship's reactor is ours." "Good. Prepare to overload it on my command. If we cannot take this ship intact, we will deny it to them." Escaral heard the announcement through the ship's communication system, now controlled by humans. A cold, professional voice speaking in his language. "Attention Drax personnel. You have 10 minutes to abandon ship. After that time, we will detonate the reactor. This is your only warning." The war chief felt something he had never experienced in 300 battles. True fear. Not fear of death, but fear of defeat by an enemy that fought in ways no Drax warrior had ever imagined. These humans were not warriors. They were something worse. They were survivors who had turned survival into an art form. He gathered his guards and began fighting toward the escape pods, knowing he had already lost. In another part of the galaxy, Dr. Subin Han sat in a comfortable chair on Earth's moon, in a facility that did not officially exist. Around her, dozens of specialists monitored screens showing alien communication networks. Her job was psychological warfare, and she was very good at it. "Begin broadcast sequence 7, she ordered, across alien space. On thousands of planets, the regular entertainment and news broadcasts were interrupted. What appeared instead were images from human history. Wars fought with primitive weapons. Cities destroyed by nuclear fire. Millions dead in conflicts that had no clear winner. Soldiers returning home with broken minds and bodies. But the message was not about the horror of war. The message was more subtle and more terrifying. The images showed that humans had done this to themselves, to their own species, on their own planet. And they had survived. They had learned. They had grown stronger. A voice narrated the images in every known alien language. The voice was calm, almost gentle, which made the message more disturbing. This is what humans did to each other when we disagreed about religion, about resources, about ideas. We nearly made our own species extinct multiple times. We created weapons capable of destroying our entire world. And we used them. We learned what total war means. We learned what desperation drives people to do. We learned how to fight when there is no hope left. The images changed, showing human children in schools, learning mathematics and history, learning about the wars their ancestors fought, learning the lessons those wars taught. Every human child learns these lessons. We teach them what war costs. We teach them how to avoid it. But we also teach them how to win it if avoiding it fails. Because the galaxy is not a safe place. Because other species look at young civilizations and see weakness. Because someone has to remember what real war looks like. The images changed again, showing current battles. Alien ships being destroyed by human tactics. Alien warriors falling to human weapons. Alien leaders looking at defeat for the first time in centuries. You thought our desire for peace was weakness. You thought our young civilization made us naive. You thought you could dictate terms to us because your empires are old and ours is new. You forgot something simple. Old empires have not fought real wars in centuries. Young empires are still learning how to fight. And humanity has never stopped learning. The broadcast ended, leaving billions of alien civilians with the same thought. If humans did this to themselves, what will they do to us? On the Krill homeworld, food riots had started. The war was only 1 week old. but already the colony supply chains were breaking down. The krill were an efficient species, their entire civilization organized like a vast hive, but that efficiency depended on systems running smoothly. When human raiders destroyed supply depots and transport ships, the entire system began to collapse. The Queen Mother watched reports of her people fighting over food in the streets and felt her certainty crumbling. She had ruled for 200 years, guided her people through expansion and prosperity. Now in barely a week everything was falling apart. Worse, the krill soldiers returning from the front lines were changed. They no longer showed proper deference to the warrior caste hierarchy. They flinched at sudden sounds. They refused to follow orders to return to combat. They had seen something that broke them, and the Queen Mother did not understand what. One of her advisors, a young male named Takaleth who had survived a battle in the Helix Nebula, tried to explain. "They are not like us." "Great Mother," he said, his mandibles clicking nervously. "They do not fight for honor or territory or resources. They fight to survive, and they have learned to do it better than any species in the galaxy. They study us, learn our weaknesses, and exploit them without mercy. They do not care about warrior codes or honorable combat. They care only about winning." "All species want to win," the Queen Mother said. "No, Great Mother. All species want victory. Humans need survival. There is a difference. Victory can be negotiated. Survival cannot." The Queen Mother finally understood why her soldiers were broken. They had met an enemy that scared them more than death. They had met an enemy that fought like prey animals with predator instincts, that used their smaller size and weaker strength as advantages rather than disadvantages, that turned every rule of civilized warfare into a weapon. Hajun Park entered the command center carrying. The Luminar Overmind Prime existed across 17,000 crystal nodes spread throughout their home system. Each node contained a fragment of its consciousness, allowing the Overmind to think with perfect clarity and coordinate its civilization with absolute efficiency. For 3,000 years, this system had worked flawlessly. Now, for the first time, the Overmind was experiencing internal conflict. Different node clusters were advocating for different strategies, creating disagreements within a single consciousness. The concept was so alien to Luminar experience that they had no word for it. Humans would have called it doubt or fear or the beginning of panic. Node cluster Alpha 7 through Alpha 12 wanted immediate surrender. They calculated that continuing the war would result in complete destruction of Luminar civilization within 30 days. Node cluster Beta 1 through Beta 8 wanted to negotiate secretly with humans, betraying the Krill and Drax to gain better terms. Node cluster Gamma wanted to fight to the end, believing surrender would destroy Luminar identity. The fact that the Overmind could not decide between these options was itself terrifying. Unity of purpose was what made the Luminar powerful. Now that unity was breaking down, fractured by an enemy that had done in 2 weeks what no civilization had managed in 3,000 years, they had made the Luminar doubt themselves. The Overmind sent a private, encrypted message to Earth. It was addressed to Ambassador Taeyang Kim, the human who had walked away from surrender terms just weeks ago. The message was simple. "We wish to discuss terms." On the Krill homeworld, riots had spread to every major city. The efficient food distribution system had completely collapsed. Colony worlds were not sending supplies because human raiders controlled the shipping lanes. The warrior caste could not restore order because the soldiers were too traumatized to fight effectively. The entire careful hierarchy that the Krill had built over millennia was falling apart. Queen Mother Tskavara sat in her throne chamber, surrounded by advisors who had no good news to offer. Every report was worse than the last. Production down, morale collapsing. 3 colony worlds had declared independence, seeing the Krill's weakness and seizing the opportunity. Client species that the Krill had conquered generations ago were rising in rebellion. "The humans have destroyed us without ever attacking our homeworld," one advisor said quietly. "They understood our systems better than we did. They knew exactly which points to strike to make everything collapse." The Queen Mother clicked her mandibles in frustration. "How long can we survive like this?" "Weeks, Great Mother. Perhaps a month. Then starvation will begin. Then the real collapse comes." She made her decision. Pride was important, but survival was more important. She sent her own message to Earth, carefully worded to suggest negotiation rather than surrender, though everyone knew what it truly was. The Drax Empire faced a different crisis. Their warrior culture was built on strength, honor, and victory. Defeat was not something Drax acknowledged, but they could not deny what was happening. 60% of their fleet was destroyed or disabled. Their most famous warriors were dead or captured. Entire battle groups had surrendered rather than face human tactics that made honorable combat impossible. Emperor Ska was 400 years old, ancient even for his long-lived species. He had seen the last great galactic war, fought when he was young. He remembered species that no longer existed, civilizations that had been wiped out. And now, studying reports from the human conflict, he was remembering something else, something that made his blood run cold. He called his head scholar, an old Drax named Reth, who specialized in ancient history. "I need you to research something. The precursors. The civilization that ruled the galaxy 10,000 years ago. Everything we know about how they fought, how they thought, how they conquered the galaxy." Reth looked surprised. "The precursors have been dead for millennia, my emperor. Why does ancient history matter now? Because I think it is not ancient at all. I think we have been assuming the precursors died out. What if they did not? What if they left?" 3 days later, Reth returned with data files that contained everything the Drax had preserved about precursor civilization. The Emperor read through the files with growing certainty. The tactics described in ancient battles matched what humans were doing now. The psychological warfare, the adaptability, the ruthless efficiency, the willingness to do whatever it took to win. But it was the genetic data that confirmed his suspicions. Fragments of precursor DNA recovered from ancient ruins. When compared to human genetic sequences that Drax intelligence had obtained, the similarities were impossible to ignore. Not exact matches, but close. Family relationships separated by thousands of generations. They put themselves in quarantine, the Emperor said quietly. The precursors conquered the galaxy, nearly destroyed it, then realized they were too dangerous. So they isolated themselves on a single world, let themselves evolve, tried to become better than they were. "Earth," Reth said, understanding. "Earth. And we threatened their children. We came to their borders with overwhelming force and demanded submission. We woke up the galaxy's oldest nightmare." The Emperor sent his own message to Earth, but unlike the others, his included the research data. He wanted humans to know that he understood what they were, and more importantly, that he understood why they had tried so hard to avoid this war. On Earth, in a secure government building in the rebuilt city of Sol, Counselor Bora Yoon sat in a conference room with the other members of Earth's Security Council. On the screens around the room, messages from 3 alien civilizations, each one trying to sound like they wanted negotiation rather than surrender. "They are desperate," one counselor said with satisfaction. "We have won. We have won the war," Bora corrected. "Now comes the harder part, winning the peace. If we are too harsh, we create enemies who will spend centuries planning revenge. If we are too soft, we look weak and invite future aggression. We need to find the balance." Ambassador Taeyang entered the room looking tired. He had barely slept in 2 weeks, managing diplomatic communications while military operations continued. "The Luminar want to negotiate first. They are offering to betray the other 2 powers in exchange for better terms." "Typical," another counselor said. "Divide them. Make separate deals. Play them against each other." "No," Taeyang said firmly. "We do the opposite. We negotiate with all 3 at once. Public negotiations, where each can see what the others are getting. We offer them the same terms. That way no one feels betrayed or specially targeted. We are not trying to create a divided galaxy. We are trying to create a stable one with Earth at its center." Bora nodded slowly. "What terms are you proposing?" "Harsh but fair. They disarm to defensive levels only. They open their borders to human inspection teams. They join a new galactic council where humanity has veto power. They share all technology. They accept human military bases in their core systems for security purposes. But in exchange, we help them rebuild. We share our technology. We protect them from outside threats. We make it clear that while they lost the war, they gained partnership." "They will see it as occupation," someone objected. "Let them," Taeyang said. "For a generation, maybe 2. But their children will grow up in a galaxy where humans are the guarantors of peace and prosperity. They will learn our language, our culture, our values. Not through force, but through choice, because they will see the benefits. Cultural conquest is more permanent than military conquest." The council debated for hours, but eventually agreed. The terms would be harsh but not cruel, decisive but not destructive. The goal was not to humiliate the three powers, but to transform them into partners who understood clearly that humanity was now the dominant force in this region of the galaxy. Admiral Mirai received orders to begin the final phase of military operations. Human forces stopped attacking and instead moved into defensive positions around alien key systems. The message was clear. We can destroy you, but we are choosing to stop. We are offering you a way out. Take it. Dr. Hajun received different orders. Begin preparing aid packages, medical supplies designed for alien biologies, food shipments to relieve the starvation on Krill worlds, technology to help the Luminar rebuild their shattered communications network. The weapons could be put away now. It was time to show what human friendship looked like. The three alien leaders received a joint message, delivered simultaneously to all three. It was from Ambassador Taeyang, and it outlined the terms of surrender in clear, simple language. The terms were non-negotiable, but they were also accompanied by offers of assistance. Threats and promises, delivered together. The final paragraph was what made the alien leaders understand that they had no choice. You came to our borders believing your ancient civilizations gave you the right to dictate our fate. You forgot that age brings wisdom but also complacency. Humanity is young, and that youth makes us dangerous because we have not forgotten how to fight. But we are also wise enough to know that endless war serves no one. We offer you a choice. Accept these terms and become our partners in building a better galaxy. Refuse, and we will do what is necessary to ensure human survival. We have already proven we can destroy you. Now we are offering you the chance to see what human cooperation. 20 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy barely remembered the three powers that had once dominated this region of space. Now, when species spoke of power and influence, they spoke of Earth and the United Galactic Federation that humanity had built from the ashes of the old order. Ambassador Taeyang Kim stood in the Grand Hall of the new Federation headquarters, built on a neutral station orbiting a binary star system. He was 78 now, with white hair and lines on his face that showed decades of difficult work. But his eyes were still sharp, still calculating, still watching everything around him. Representatives from 47 species gathered for the Federation's 20th anniversary celebration. Krill in their polished exoskeletons, now working as engineers and scientists in human colonies. Luminar in their crystal shells, their distributed consciousness now helping to manage the Federation's communications network. Drax warriors serving in the Federation's military, fighting alongside humans to protect the expanding borders. It had taken 20 years, but the transformation was complete. The three species that had threatened humanity were now humanity's partners, even friends. Their children grew up learning both their native languages and human languages. Their schools taught human history alongside their own. Their economies were integrated with Earth's markets. They had become part of something larger than themselves. Admiral Mirai Choi, now a gray-haired woman in her 60s, stood at a viewport watching ships arrive for the celebration. Human vessels mixed with alien designs, all flying the Federation flag. She smiled, remembering the desperate war they had fought to reach this point. 20 years, said a voice beside her. Captain Ji-Won Lee, now an admiral herself, had come to stand next to her former commander. It seems like yesterday we were jumping through minefields fighting for survival. And now we protect 47 species, Mirai said. Strange how things work out. We became conquerors to survive. Now we are guardians to maintain peace. Do you think it will last? Ji-Won asked. Mirai considered the question carefully. The military part? Yes, human doctrine is now standard across the Federation. Every species learns our tactics, our strategies, our weapons systems. They learn from our history. They understand why we fight the way we do. More importantly, they understand that fighting us would be suicide. But, Ji-Won prompted, hearing the hesitation. But military dominance is not the same as cultural acceptance. Some species still resent us. They remember being defeated, being forced to accept our terms. Their grandparents fought against us. That resentment does not disappear in one generation. Which is why we keep bases in their systems, Ji-Won said. Just in case. Just in case, Mirai agreed. Hope for peace but prepare for war, the human way. In another part of the station, Dr. Hajun Park gave a presentation to a mixed audience of human and alien scientists. His hair was white now, and he walked with a slight limp from an injury sustained during the war. But his mind was as sharp as ever. The biological weapons we developed during the war have never been deployed, he told the audience. They remain in secure storage, closely monitored. We keep them not as threats, but as reminders. Reminders that we can end conflicts decisively if necessary, but choose not to. Reminders that mercy is a choice, not a weakness. A young Krill scientist raised a claw. Dr. Park, do you regret creating such terrible weapons? Hajun thought about the question for a long moment. I regret that they were necessary. I regret that the galaxy forced us to prove we could be as terrible as any precursor. But I do not regret the fact that we created them. Those weapons ended the war quickly, with fewer deaths than years of conventional warfare would have caused. They demonstrated capability without requiring demonstration. That was their purpose. A Luminar student pulsed a question. Do you think humanity will ever use such weapons? I hope not, Hajun said honestly. But I know we will if necessary. That is the burden of being the galaxy's guardians. We must be willing to do terrible things to prevent worse things from happening. We must be strong enough to make hard choices. That is what leadership means. In the Federation Council chambers, Councillor Bora Yoon, now President of the United Galactic Federation, prepared to give her anniversary speech. She was 65, experienced in ways that few humans in history had been. She had guided the Federation through its difficult early years, balanced competing interests, navigated crisis after crisis. The chamber was full. Representatives from every member species sat in their designated sections. Media from 1,000 worlds broadcast her speech live. This was the moment to define what the Federation had become and what it hoped to be. She began speaking, her voice calm and confident. 20 years ago, humanity was faced with a choice. 3 powerful civilizations came to our borders with overwhelming force, demanding our submission. They believed their age and strength gave them the right to dictate our fate. They were wrong. She paused, letting the words sink in. Every species here knew the story, but hearing it from the human who had helped shape the response was different. We could have accepted their terms. We could have submitted, hoping for mercy from species that saw us as children to be controlled. Instead, we chose to fight. We fought with everything we had, using every lesson our violent history had taught us. We fought not for conquest, but for survival, and we won. But winning the war was not our greatest achievement. Our greatest achievement was what we did after the war ended. We could have destroyed our enemies. We had the capability. We had developed weapons that could have ended entire species. We chose not to use them. We chose instead to offer partnership, to share our strength, to build something better than what existed before. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of alien representatives. Some of you remember being defeated. Some of you remember accepting terms that seemed harsh at the time. I understand that resentment, but I ask you to look at what we have built together. Your economies are stronger than they were 20 years ago. Your people live longer, healthier lives. Your children have opportunities your grandparents never imagined. You are part of something larger than your individual civilizations. A Drax representative stood, his scales glinting in the chamber lights. President Yoon, I fought against humans during the war. I lost friends, family, pride. For years I resented the Federation, resented human dominance. But my daughter serves in the Federation military now alongside humans. She tells me stories of cooperation, of mutual respect, of shared purpose. She does not see humans as conquerors. She sees them as partners. He paused, gathering his words. My question is this. How do we ensure that future generations continue to see partnership rather than domination? How do we prevent resentment from building into rebellion? Bora smiled. It was the question she had been hoping someone would ask. By being worthy of leadership, by continuing to share technology, resources, opportunities, by treating every species with respect even when we disagree, by remembering that we became guardians not by choice, but by necessity, and that guardianship is a responsibility, not a privilege, but also, she continued, her voice harder now, by being honest about what we are, humanity learned to be peaceful after learning to be terrible. We know what we are capable of. Every species in this Federation should understand that human restraint is a choice we make every day. We choose peace because we understand the cost of war better than any young civilization should. But make no mistake, we will do what is necessary to protect this Federation and all its members. In a classroom on the Krill homeworld, young students learned human history alongside their own. Their teacher, a Krill named Takaleth who had survived the Battle of Helix Nebula, Taught them about the war with careful honesty. The humans defeated us not because they were stronger, but because they were more desperate, he explained. We fought to expand. They fought to survive. When you fight for survival, you use every advantage, every trick, every lesson history taught you. The humans had learned those lessons well. A student clicked a question. Teacher, are you afraid of humans? Tekleth considered the question. I respect them. I respect their capabilities, their intelligence, their willingness to do whatever survival requires. Fear and respect are not so different, but I also trust them. They could have destroyed us. They chose not to. They could rule us harshly. Instead, they treat us as partners. That choice matters. On Earth, in a military academy in the mountains, human instructors taught mixed classes of human and alien cadets. The curriculum included detailed studies of the war, analyzing every battle, every tactic, every decision. The lessons were clear. Humans won through preparation, adaptation, and ruthless efficiency, but they won the peace through restraint and generosity. Major Youngsu Kang, now a colonel teaching advanced tactics, told his students something his own teacher had told him 20 years ago. The goal of war is not to kill enemies. The goal of war is to achieve political objectives. Sometimes you achieve those objectives by killing efficiently. Sometimes you achieve them by showing mercy. The art is knowing which choice serves your objectives better. A Drax cadet raised his claw. Colonel, your species developed weapons that could have eliminated ours completely. Why did you not use them? Youngsu smiled. Because destroying you would have made us feared, but